prospective purchaser of an ADP simple IRA that goes into a mutual fund, that ADP simple IRA plan is mostly for the business owner.
Object to form.
I'm sorry, Mr. Goodman, but I'm unable to answer the question in the way that you're phrasing it. I'm sorry.
Okay, back to the ambiguity, because I thought I corrected it, so I'll let you explain to me how it's ambiguous. Is it still ambiguous?
Yes,
In what way?
Object to form.
in several ways. I guess we have to break down each portion of the question.
Okay, can you think of any scenario where it would be okay for an unlicensed, unregistered rep employed by ADP Inc. or ADP LLC to say that to an ADP customer?
Object to form. Say what?
My question was, if we've gone through the scenario, I don't want to repeat it, but can she think of a scenario where that would be permissible, where that statement would be permissible if it was uttered by an ADP LLC employee who's unlicensed and unregistered? She's saying it's too ambiguous. I'm saying, can you think of a way where that would be permissible? And that might help me and clear up the ambiguity.
Object to form. It's still vague and ambiguous.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Goodman. I'm not able to answer the question the way that you're phrasing it. Sorry.
That's right. We'll keep trying.
Okay.
Can an ADP, an unlicensed ADP LLC sales rep,
Mhm,
we've already discussed what unlicensed means,
mhm.
can they talk to a prospective client about an IRA that's tied to a mutual fund?
I
Object to
can't
form.
answer the question the way that you're phrasing it. I'm sorry.
Okay, I think we're running around in circles here, so we'll be here for a while. So that's fine. I'm going to come back to that, and maybe I'll figure out a way that you can understand
Okay.
for the end of the evening.
I never said I didn't understand the question. I said the question was ambiguous.
Well,
I never said I didn't understand it.
I'll see if I can figure out a way to make it
Okay.
ambiguous. Would it be, can you think of a scenario? Let me ask you this way. We'll try to lay a different foundation.
Okay.
Our ADP small business service representatives who are unlicensed talk to their clients, ADP clients, about simple IRAs?
Yes.
Okay. And in that conversation, can they say simple IRA, ADP's simple IRA plan is mostly for business owners?
Object to form.
I can't answer the question, I guess, in the way that you're phrasing it, Mr.
All right,
Goodman.
we'll keep trying here. So we've already established that they can have a conversation.
Yes.
And then you said you understood my question. So previously, I'm asking this. It's a very simple question, and you know, if we can't come up with the ambiguity, then we'll just certify it. I'm trying not to do that so we don't have to come back. But my question is, in the you just said that the conversations about the ADP SBS reps who are unlicensed and unregistered can have conversations with their clients about simple IRAs. And I'm asking, is there a scenario in any conversation that we just discussed or any conversation that you just said could take place where that conversation could include the following words: ADP simple IRA plan is mostly for the business owner?
Object to form.
I'm sorry, but I can't answer that question in the way that you're phrasing it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Can we certify the question, please? If you can't provide me with the ambiguity, I'll have to certify it. If you want to try to provide me with the ambiguity one more time in that question, then I'll be happy to try to readdress it.
I'm going to object to that. You can certify all day long. but it's your job
Thank
to
you.
ask the
Thank you for
questions.
your
It's not her
permission.
job to fix your questions for you.
I'm asking her to put on the record what the ambiguity is, so when the judge looks at it, he can determine whether or not.
That's not her job. That's not her job. She's a witness here.
Are you
She's not an
instructing her
attorney.
not? Are you instructing her not to clear up the ambiguity or to tell me?
No,
the
I'm telling you that it's your job to ask a better question, not ask her to tell you what's wrong with your question.
Okay, sir, we'll certify the question.
No, wait, I'm gonna chime in here. It is not his job. If she says she's got an ambiguity and he asks her to clarify it, it is her job to clarify it. I just want to put
That's
that on
not
the
true.
record.
That's false.
It is absolutely true. He's asking her a question that she needs to answer, and she needs to clarify.
You don't
If she-
decide what she needs to answer, Joe. You're not even taking this deposition.
I don't care. You've
I
interrupted.
know you don't
me
care.
times with
That's
me.
obvious you don't care.
All right, Mr. Reese, you're the one that unilaterally sets hearings. All I'm telling you right now is we're not going to sit here and play this game. If he's asking her to clarify an ambiguity, that is a question. And it's a very valid question, especially the way this depo has gone today.
The depo's gone the way it's gone because Mr. Goodman
No, the
has
depo
not been able to answer proper questions. That's why.
no,
That's the
that is
reason it's
not
gone the
true.
way it's gone.
That is not true.
So stop wasting time and finish up with this deposition already.
I'm not wasting time, Mr. Ruiz.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm
You're
not.
not even taking the deposition, and here you are chiming in.
That's because you keep me going. Are you done?
No, you're not even started. You're not even taking this deposition. So just turn
You're right.
your mic back on mute and let Bob take the deposition.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz.
Okay, so I'm going to ask another question
Sure.
based on the permissible conversation that you indicated, an unlicensed, unregistered SBS rep of ADP Inc. or ADP LLC can have with a client. I'm going to ask more questions, so I don't have to repeat that part of it over and over. As part of that conversation that you said is permissible, I'm going to add, would it be permissible for that person in what you said would be a permissible conversation to add the words, Congress passed the Secure Act to incentivize businesses to open a simple IRA or retirement plan?
So it'd be helpful for me if you can clarify the question so I can give you an answer
Okay,
for which question we're talking about. That would be helpful. Thank you.
okay, so here's the scenario. An unlicensed, unregistered ADP Inc. or ADP LLC sales rep is talking to a client about a simple IRA. Okay,
Okay.
is that okay for him to do?
Yes.
In that conversation, would it be okay for him to say, Congress passed the Secure Act to incentivize businesses to open a simple IRA or retirement plan?
I would not know.
You what?
Sorry. Go ahead, Mario. I'm sorry.
I just said objection to form.
And then what was your answer? I'm sorry.
I wouldn't know.
Okay. And same conversation, another line, if that rep said, the IRS gives you a $120 tax credit, would that be okay?
I would not know.
Okay. And can an ADP, unlicensed, unregistered SBS sales rep activate a $500 tax credit that you know of?
Object to form.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And would it be okay for an unlicensed, back to the same scenario, if he added the words, the IRS is paying you $418 to have the simple IRA plan?
Object to form.
I'm not aware of that.
So you don't know that would be permissible? Is that what you're saying? I don't want to misunderstand.
Correct. Yes.
And then would it be okay instead for that in that conversation for the rep to say the IRS will pay $82 just to have the plan in place?
Object to form.
I'm not aware about the IRS regulation for that.
Okay. And would it be okay for this rep to say the client will be getting money back into their pocket because of all the tax credits they receive from having the plan in place?
Objective
I'm-
form.
I'm not aware.
Okay. And would it be correct or accurate if he said all the compliance sits on ADP's shoulders, so they never, meaning the client never has to do anything as it relates to their simple IRA?
Objective form.
Can you restate the question, please?
Yes. Can, in that scenario that we've talked about, can that ADP rep go on and say that all the compliance relating to the simple IRA sits or falls on ADP's shoulders, so the client never has to do anything?
Objective form.
I'm not aware of that.
Okay, so you don't know, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. And can he, I think we already established this, but can he, in that conversation, can he go on to talk about how stocks go up and down?
Objective form.
No,
Okay. And would it be okay for, in that, again, that same conversation, for that rep to tell a business owner or client that even though they technically, meaning the rep is not supposed to give paperwork to an employee, no, scratch that. Let me rephrase that. Is it in that conversation, would it be permissible for that rep to imply that there are certain IRS rules in place, but you really don't need to worry about it because it's not extremely watched over?
Objective form.
I don't know. I don't know even how to answer that question. I don't know.
Okay. And I'm going to try this one more time. In the recording I played, did you hear anything that you would consider to be improper or a compliance issue?
I'm going to object to all questions regarding the recording. The recording has not been authenticated. I don't know where you got that recording. I don't know who the people are in the recording. I don't know when or where it was done. I don't know why it wasn't produced. And it's got nothing to do with Ms. Hanley.
Right, you've made your objection clear. I'm asking if you're going to allow her to answer the question or not. Your objection is on the record and noted.
If you know the answer, provide the answer.
Is that directed at me?
Yes, Juanita, if you know,
Oh,
if
I'm
you know
sorry.
the answer.
I don't know the answer regarding that recording.
So I'm not asking about the recording, I'm asking what,
But your question just was specifically about the recording.
no, my question was, did you?
Well, maybe have the court reporter read it back.
Why don't I just ask the question and maybe it'll be easier to understand and we don't have to
You
bother.
did reference the recording in your question, Bob.
What's that?
Your question was there anything improper in the recording? And I'm
Right.
paraphrasing. I did reference the recording.
Okay.
If you want to ask a different question, go ahead and ask it.
When I played an audio 20 minutes ago, which I should have entered as an exhibit, Madam Court Reporter, what exhibit number would that be?
14.
Exhibit 14 was an audio file, and I played it for you. And my question is, did you hear anything that if it was in real life or actually took place would cause a concern for you from a compliance issue?
I'm going to reassert all my objections.
Okay, you may answer.
I can't speak to the recording. I
I'm
don't
not
know
asking-
in regards to the recording. I don't know anything about the recording.
I'm not asking if you know about it. I'm asking if
But you did ask me that. You asked me specifically about the
asking-
recording
okay,
and
let me-
my
let me do it.
opinion of the content in the recording.
I'm asking about the verbiage, the language used, the verbiage. If you, let me put it a different way. Did you hear the recording? Did you
Yes.
listen? Okay,
I heard a recording.
okay.
I'm sorry, let me clarify. I heard an audio
Yes,
that was played back on this meeting of two people appearing to have a discussion. That's what I heard.
okay, perfect. And if in real life, that was an actual recorded phone call between an ADP SBS rep who's unlicensed and unregistered and a client, and it was sent to you to ask if it was compliant or not, what would your answer be?
I'm going to object. Why don't you represent to her whether it was in fact an ADP person?
Mario, I'm going to ask the questions the way I want. I appreciate your input.
I'm going to object to the form of the question. I'm going to reassert all my prior objections
That's
about
fine.
the audio, the unidentified audio that wasn't produced in discovery to us.
And that my question is my question, so you can answer now that the objection's on the record.
Could you restate the question, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
If somebody within ADP sent you a recording that actually was recorded from an actual sales call that actually took place, if somebody sent that to you and it included all the words that were in that recording, would it raise a compliance issue in your mind?
Object to form.
I'm sorry, but I don't know how to answer the question. I'm not objecting to answering questions. I just don't know how to answer the question in the way that you're phrasing it to me, Mr. Goodman. I'm sorry.
Right. You heard the recording, is that, or the audio file? Let's just call it an audio file.
Yes.
You said you heard it. And my question is a hypothetical question. If an actual ADP SBS sales rep employed by ADP LLC, who is unlicensed, had that conversation verbatim with an actual ADP client, and you heard it, would you have a concern from a compliance standpoint?
Same objections as before.
Understood.
It's difficult for me to answer a question on a verbatim of a recording that I just heard today. I'm sorry, but I just don't know how to answer the question.
Is it confusing?
Objection. Objection to form.
No, it's not confusing.
Is it ambiguous?
Yes, some of it is, sure.
How so?
Which part of it? Going to object to form. You played a recording that was what, 25 minutes, 20 minutes?
It was
Objection.
And you asked her,
I'm gonna chime in again, Mario, because you're
listen,
violating.
you're
the
not
rules.
taking this deposition.
I don't care, you're
not
violating the
taking
rules.
this deposition and you're not allowed to
violating the
tag
rules,
team here.
Mario, you're violating the rules too. You're providing speaking objections and you're coaching your witness. So please stop and I will stop. And you won't see my face again. I know you'll be very happy
No,
about
you
that.
need to stop because you're not in this deposition. You're just an
But
observer here.
you're violating the
Stop
rules
taking
right
this
now, Mario.
deposition.
Quit
Mario.
coaching your witness.
Mario, you are offering up speaking objections, which are impermissible. So now I've
Listen,
said it.
you've got an illegal recording that you obtained through illegal means that you didn't produce in discovery, that you're playing for a witness who's never seen it before. You don't want to identify who the speakers are, how you got it, where it was, when it was, and you're talking about speaking objections?
Doesn't matter.
No,
You
it
can
does
make that
matter.
argument. You can make that argument later in front of the judge if you think that that's the case.
You're not in this deposition, Joe. You're not taking this
And-
deposition.
And
Obvious.
you're not following the rules of civil procedure by making speaking objections and coaching your witness.
I'm not coaching the witness.
Okay, so my question was, what ambiguity is there that's causing you not to be able to answer that question?
Objection to form.
One, the recording is very long. You're asking me to recount every phrase and every word that was said in a recording that I just heard today, and I'm not able to do that.
Is it permissible for an unlicensed, unregistered sales rep employed by ADP Inc. or ADP LLC to violate FINRA rules when speaking to a potential customer about ADP securities or ADP
Objective.
IRA? So, you know, you can tie to a mutual fund.
Objective form.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yep. And then is it possible that an unlicensed, unregistered ADP SBS sales rep who is employed by ADP LLC or ADP Inc., can they violate FINRA rules when speaking to a potential customer about a simple IRA tied to a mutual fund?
Objective form.
Is it possible? Yes, it's
Okay.
possible.
Have you heard of it happening with ADP Inc. or ADP LLC SBS sales reps who are unlicensed?
No, I have not heard about the possibility of a SBS associate violating a FINRA rule.
Have you heard about any ADP SBS? Let me rephrase it. Have you heard, are you aware of any ADP Inc. or ADP LLC SBS sales representatives who have violated FINRA rules in this, in when discussing a simple IRA?
No, I am not aware of a SBS payroll associated violating a FINRA rule when discussing a simple IRA.
Okay. And back to that, remember the scenario where I asked you if a sales executive in ADP's SBS division who is unlicensed and unregistered created or launched a promotion where whoever sold the most simples in his office could get earbuds, win the earbuds. Would that have to go through your office from a compliance standpoint?
Objective form.
Yes.
Okay. And how would that process, explain to me what would happen? How would that work?
So as you saw on the slide, at that time, Kelly Hogg was the sales liaison for SBS. Need to contact her, which is what I previously stated, to inquire about submitting the promotion and getting funding for that promotion. Kelly is the liaison for compliance and would work to submit the promotion to broker-dealer compliance for review and approval and or denial of the promotion.
Okay. And in that process, what's considered? What do they look at? What are the factors, so to speak, they look at to determine whether it's permissible or not?
Can you be more specific?
No, because I don't know what you guys look at. I'm asking you if that situation we just talked about happened and the person that's looking at it, what do they need to see? Do you know what they are looking for to make sure it's compliant before they can approve it? Or what I'm trying to understand what they consider, what goes through their mind to say, yes, this is approved, or no, it's not.
I guess I'm having a difficult time answering the question in the way you're phrasing it based on the answer I already gave. So
Okay,
can you
so
just,
so I understand the process.
okay,
I guess, and maybe I've already asked it. If I did, let me know. But in that process, what do they look at to say yes or no? What do they
can you clarify the question, please?
I can't. I'm asking you. I don't work there. So you know these people. I assume you know what they do when a proposal like this is presented to them. And if you don't know, then that's fine. Let me ask you that. Do you know what what they look for or look at, or what goes through their mind in how they decide whether something's permissible or not?
Object to form.
I'm sorry, Mr. Goodman, I can't answer the question in the way that you're phrasing it.
Okay, so is it confusing or ambiguous?
It's ambiguous.
In how so?
You're saying they, you're not defining who they is, who's they's process. I don't know what they you're talking about.
The two people that you mentioned would look at it for compliance. You mentioned two females' names, right?
That wasn't what I said.
Okay, let's start over. We know the contest. This guy, this unlicensed sales executive from an ADP SBS office wants to do the promotion we just talked about.
Okay.
We discussed that it needs to go through your office. You discussed it would go to to a compliance person. I believe you named the compliance person. And I'm asking you what that compliance person would consider in making the decision as to whether or not it could be approved.
So you're not correctly restating my answer. That's why I'm having a
Exactly.
difficult
Go ahead.
time answering the
Right.
question.
All right, so this proposal comes up.
Yep.
And then what happens?
So if it's coming from sales, sales will contact Kelly Hogg at that time, right, to make a determination if there's funding available for that promotion. Kelly will then work with compliance to submit that content to compliance for review, who will conduct the review to approve that promotion or not approve the promotion.
Okay, and in that review, what do they consider?
Can you be more specific, please?
What do they review? What do they look at? Obviously they look at something, right? You said they sent it to, let's assume it got through budgeting for funding. And then you said it goes to the compliance people. And I'm
Okay.
asking you how they do their job.
Okay, so you're asking me how compliance does the job. Thank you for clarifying. So compliance looks at imagery in the promotion. Compliance will also contact Jim Blake to ensure that it can be approved for a simple or set product, to make sure that the promotion is not misleading, has misleading language, or misleading imagery. If it does not, then it's approved and returned to Kelly, who then will return it to SBS. If it's not, then we mark it as disapproved.
Okay, and what would happen if they skipped that process and they didn't send it in for compliance and they just ran that program, that promotion that we just discussed with the earbuds?
Object to form.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure, so you understand the promotion with the earbuds that's my hypothetical.
Right.
And if that sales executive, that ADP Inc. or ADP LLC SBS sales executive chose not to send it up for approval and just ran with the program, what would there be consequences?
I don't know if there would be consequences if a sales executive did not submit a promotion to compliance that I am unaware of. I do not know if there would be consequences for that sales executive.
And if compliance learned after the program was run that it had been run without their approval and it violated the standards, meaning it wouldn't have been approved, would there be any consequences then that you're aware of?
Yes.
And what would that entail? What would those consequences be?
Well, it's going to depend on the people who were involved, but certainly we would be escalating to SBS legal. We would be escalating to global compliance. If any of those individuals were on broker dealer who facilitated that promotion without approval from compliance, then ideally they would have a compliance conference. We would also notify their immediate supervisor and move to pull the promotion until it was approved.
Okay, and are you aware of that actual scenario happening? Not the earbuds, but with somebody running a program without approval that.
Yes.
And can you tell me how many times that's happened in your in your years with ADP?
I don't recall the number of times.
Do you think it's 5 or 10 or more like 50 or?
No, it's not 50 times that I became aware of something. No, but I don't recall the number of times.
Okay. And then are you aware that Mr. Schwartz's complaint that he was required to sell simple IRAs without being licensed or registered with FINRA?
I don't know how to answer the question the way you're phrasing it to me, Mr. Goodman. I'm sorry.
Are you aware of Mr. Schwartz's, are you aware of Mr. Schwartz? Mr. David
Yes.
Schwartz, that's the subject of the lawsuit that we're here today.
Yes.
Are you aware that he complained that he was forced to sell simple IRAs, which were tied to mutual funds, without being registered or licensed with FINRA?
The way you phrased that question, no, I am not aware that David Schwartz was forced to sell a simple IRA tied to a mutual fund without being licensed with FINRA.
Okay, and if he was, would that be a violation?
Object to form.
I don't even know how to answer.
Let me.
Can you clarify? Yeah.
Let me check it. If David Schwartz is unlicensed and unregistered and was forced to sell simple IRAs tied to mutual funds to clients, would that be a FINRA violation?
Can you clarify the question, please?
Yeah, so David Schwartz works for ADP Inc. or ADP LLC. He's in the small business services division. He's unlicensed and unregistered with FINRA. He sells somebody a simple IRA because he's told he has to. Would that be, forget they told he has to, he sells somebody a simple IRA. Would that be a violation of FINRA?
Object to form.
Your question, can you just repeat the question one more time, please, just to make sure I heard that correctly? Thank you.
David Schwartz, in this scenario, is employed by ADP LLC or ADP Inc. David Schwartz is unlicensed and unregistered. He's not a registered person with FINRA. He's not licensed. He has no Series 7, no Series 63, no licenses whatsoever. He is selling a simple IRA to a client that is tied to a mutual fund. Is that a violation of FINRA rules?
I can't answer the question the way that you're phrasing the question. I'm sorry.
Okay, is it
Happy
confusing?
to answer a question. I just can't answer it in the way you're phrasing it.
Okay, is it confusing or ambiguous?
It's ambiguous.
In what way?
It's making the assumption that the simple IRA is governed under FINRA and that simple IRA is a security, which is not.
Are simple IRAs tied, that ADP sells, tied to mutual funds?
Object to form.
Can you be more specific, please?
Are the funds that when ADP sells a simple IRA, is the money invested into a mutual fund?
Yes.
Is a mutual fund considered a security?
Yes.
Okay, so if David Schwartz, who's unlicensed and unregistered and works for ADP Inc. or ADP LLC, sells a simple IRA sold by ADP, is that a FINRA violation?
Object to form.
Can you repeat the question, please, Mr. Goodman?
No, I've said it 5 times and I'm just gonna move on. I just realized you're not gonna, I don't think you're capable of answering it. I'll try it one more time. You understand David Schwartz's position, right? He works for ADP LLC or ADP Inc., correct? Right, in this scenario, I'm asking you.
In this scenario, yes.
Okay, and he's unlicensed and unregistered.
In this scenario, I understand that.
And he sells a simple IRA tied to that's okay. So that's your okay, I see where you're going. I'll come back to it. I understand where you're at on that one. You said that ADP cannot provide an incentive to an employer to buy a simple as a bundle with payroll services. Is that correct?
Correct.
When did that policy go into effect?
I don't recall. That policy was in place when I joined ADP, that employers can't receive incentives from purchasing additional products.
Okay, and do you know if they could ever?
I don't know if they could ever do that.
Okay. And I may have asked this before, what's a hot start? You know that term?
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay. Let's take a quick break. I may be just about done, so gives me about 5 minutes and we'll come back and hopefully wrap it up.
Okay, thank you.
Time is 3:55 p.m. We are going off the video record. Time is 4:02 p.m. We are now back on the video record.
So I've just got a few more questions, and I'm going to go back to the one where we were talking about David Schwartz being an unlicensed, unregistered person
Right.
who was employed by ADP LLC. And so you understand that part so far, right?
Yes, I'm with you on that.
So as I'm going to roll this out, if I get into an area where you feel it's ambiguous or the terminology is causing you heartburn, raise your hand or shake your head and I'll stop, and we'll stop there, and then maybe that'll streamline this process.
I don't have heartburn today.
What's that?
I don't have heartburn today.
I didn't mean if it's causing you to feel that the question is that you can't answer it the way I'm phrasing it, then you can shake your head no. As I'm getting into that section, it might make this more efficient.
Okay,
Is that okay? Okay.
sure, that's fair.
So far, you understand my question is based on David Schwartz being employed by ADP LLC.
Yes,
He's not licensed or a registered person,
correct.
and he is selling a simple IRA. Okay, so it's the selling part that, okay. So if David Schwartz is discussing a simple IRA with a client,
Okay,
and he is instructed to talk about rates of return, taxes, and do other things that only a licensed person should be doing, but he does it anyhow because he's told to, is that a FINRA violation?
Object to form.
so that part is ambiguous based on the questions you asked me earlier about the hypothetical 6% return.
So okay, let's start with that. Would he be able to talk about that 6% return?
Yes, I
Okay.
said that earlier, yes.
Okay, and clarifying it for where we're going now. And if he talked about American Century Investments and that the money was going into a mutual fund, would that be okay?
No,
Okay, and if he did do that, even though he's not supposed to do that, would that be a FINRA violation?
Object to form.
can you clarify the question, please?
If he crossed the line, if he did, in this example we just said, he did those things that only a licensed person can do, and he's not supposed to do them, but he did them anyhow, is it a FINRA violation?
Object to form.
Can you be more specific, please, about the FINRA violation?
Is it in your mind? You're smarter than me when it comes to FINRA. I'll just give you that. So you know the rules better than me. I'm asking you in that scenario, if you can think of any FINRA rules that would violate.
Yes,
Okay, and which rule would that be, or rules?
the investment company rules.
Okay, and if David Schwartz had been instructed and trained by SBS people who are also unlicensed and unregistered, would that also be a violation
Object to form.
of FINRA rules? I'm sorry, can you think of a FINRA rule that would violate?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. If David Schwartz's superiors, his direct reports, his boss, his supervisor,
Mhm.
told him to do and taught him to do those things that he's not allowed to do, would that
Can you be
also,
specific? Can you be
the things
specific?
that,
though?
the things that you just, the talk about the investment rule that you just said would potentially be violated if he did talked about the American Century investments and that it's in a mutual fund and all that. That part was volatile. And I'm asking if he was taught to do that, would that also be a violation?
Yes.
Okay. And then what policies does ADP have in place to make sure that scenario doesn't happen?
So we develop new hire training that we disseminate to SBS payroll associates outlining what they're permitted to discuss and what they're not permitted to discuss. You know, including how they would discuss American Century, but not getting into a mutual fund conversation about American Century. So that's all covered in new hire training.
Okay. And so in that, I understand what they're trained or what you're saying, how they're trained. What's in place to ensure that the scenario I just, other than training, is there any checks and balances, audits? Is there something you guys do that ADP does to make sure that the scenario I gave you doesn't happen?
Yes.
And can you tell me what those procedures or policies might be?
When an SBS sales associate is referring a simple IRA to RS, they are required to call the Simple Step desk. That's an internal compliance control. The desk will go over the features of the plan. They will also go over the investments of the plan and confirm the selection with the client. They will also ask the client if they want educational information about the funds available by American Century, including the performance, who the money managers are, how long those funds have been around, and help facilitate the client selecting the mutual fund. SBS associates are not permitted to have that conversation. The desk has that conversation. SBS associates have no way to independently sell the simple because they go through the desk.
And I understand that. And I guess my question is, my understanding is they bring the simple desk on when the customer's ready to go. Is that your understanding of the process?
Object to form.
No, that's not my understanding of the process, that they bring the client to the desk when the client is quote unquote ready to go.
Okay, so is it your belief that the SBS sales rep says, hey, would you be interested in a retirement plan, and then gets the simple desk on the phone?
It's possible.
So how does that, then you're saying the simple desk can do all that in 5 minutes based on that exhibit 10 we looked at that says the streamlined process with the SBS rep having it on their iPad. So I'm confused. It's not just, hey, are you interested in an IRA, and then put them on the phone. It's more than that, isn't it?
Objection to form.
Can you just clarify the question for
Yeah,
me,
so
Mr. Goodman?
So we went through that exhibit 10, which was the SBS and had the handshake logo on there, or
Yep.
logo on there. In there, it talks about streamlined process that the SBS rep does on their iPad.
Mhm.
So that happens first, and then does that happen first, and then they get the simple desk on the phone?
I would say typically, sure, typically.
And what is prior to the simple desk getting on the phone, what procedures are in place to prevent the SBS rep who's unlicensed and unregistered from talking about, other than being told not to, from talking about American Century investments and mutual funds and investments, in other words, going over the line? What procedures
Sure.
does ADP have in place to prevent that?
So the performance information for the mutual funds are not circulated to SBS. A list of any American Century funds are not circulated to SBS, or the performance information about those funds are not circulated to SBS. That's only provided to registered representatives of broker-dealer. Additionally, the SBS associates are not provided with the code to authorize the sale of a mutual fund. That responsibility only sits with the desk.
Give me a minute. I'm gonna look at a few notes and we're almost done, I promise.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, just a few more questions. Do you oversee, are you ready? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure you're ready.
All right. It just took me a minute to unmute. Hi. I'm back.
Hang on a second. Do you oversee ADP investment advisory services?
Partially, yes. Mhm.
Okay. And are there separate written supervisory manuals for SBS and for broker dealer? Is it, do you know, let me rephrase. Are there manuals, operating manuals or instructions for SBS that are separate from broker dealer?
I'm not aware of operational manuals for SBS.
Okay. And are you familiar with FINRA Rule 2020?
2020, no, not off the top of my head.
Okay. Let's see. And would you agree it's not permissible for SBS reps to give tax advice if they're not qualified to provide tax advice?
Object to form.
I don't know what's permissible for SBS associates to do in regards to tax advice.
Okay.
They're not registered with broker-dealer. I don't supervise them. They're not under my authority.
Okay, and you back to the manuals for ADP LLC. You said you weren't aware of any manuals or operating guides for ADP LLC SBS division, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Any written website instructions, anything you can think of that you're familiar with about how SBS does business and its sales practices and how it operates and trains its employees?
Object to form.
Yes.
What are you aware of with as far as SBS in whatever operating guides or whatever it may be?
All associates of ADP, there's an echo. I don't know if someone's took themselves off of mute. All associates of ADP were employees of ADP, and ADP has a portal called Policy Tech. Policy Tech has all the policies that we all attest to as associates of ADP, which include, you know, code of conduct policy, policies on sexual harassment, policies on electronic data, use of ADP data and equipment, amongst other types of policies.
Okay. And as far as SBS sales techniques and policies, are you familiar with manuals or this information you're kind of telling me about now related to SBS sales?
No, I'm not familiar with a SBS sales policy, no.
Okay. And do you know if sales reps can access ADP SBS policy if they work for ADP LLC or ADP Inc.?
Are you talking about the policies I just mentioned?
Yes.
Sorry?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, yes, I believe that they do have access to Policy Tech and can review the ADP policies, yes.
Okay. Okay. I think that's going to do it for me.
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Time is 4:17 PM. This concludes this video deposition.